Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is urging his people to brace themselves for more Russian attacks as Putin targets Ukraine's power grid, plunging entire cities into the cold and darkness as winter sets in. ABC News' Inez de la Cuetara is live in Kyiv with the latest. Inez, Ukraine is warning of this possible new round of evacuations there in the capital. Bring us up to date on what you're seeing.
Hey, Kara. Yeah, so Ukrainian President Zelenskyy is warning that Russia is gearing up for a new round of attacks, and he is urging both defense forces and civilians to brace for that possibility. We know Russia's supply of weapons is dwindling, but Zelenskyy says that for as long as the Russians have missiles, things will not calm down. Most of the fighting is concentrated in the east, but Russia is also zeroing in on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, on its energy grid, leaving millions out in the cold without power, without heating, without water. This is really Putin weaponizing winter and trying to make people's lives here as miserable as possible so that they in turn will pressure the Ukrainian government to come to the negotiating table. So some really dire conditions for people here. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has not ruled out evacuations. The big question, though, is where would people actually go? So in the past, the thinking had been maybe people from Kyiv could then head over to cities like Lviv, but we're also seeing the energy grids in those cities being targeted. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and Kyiv's mayor are also facing criticism for not having a backup plan in place. It would take a lot of logistical planning to actually move people out of Kyiv, roughly 500,000 people here in Kyiv. Kyiv's mayor talking about that also today and saying he doesn't believe there will be mass evacuations. He believes there could be temporary relocations to the suburbs, for instance, places that do have power. But I'll tell you, neighboring countries like Poland, for instance, are certainly starting to brace for the possibility that there could be people fleeing the cold, Kira.
Well, just looking behind you, usually during the live shots, we see lights, but it's completely dark behind you. Let's talk more about Ukraine's power grid and how it's holding up. Can it hold up under these waves of Russian attacks?
Yeah, Kira. So according to Ukraine's energy company, just 42% of residents here in Kyiv have power as of right now. You can see it behind me. We went out for a drive earlier today just to see the conditions, and there were entire blocks that were completely darkened. The city has set up around town so-called warming shelters for people to head to and warm up or charge their phones should they need to. They're calling those invincibility points. So I think that gives you a sense of the Ukrainian mindset here. They are undeterred. They are going to continue going. We're going to see, we have seen incredible images coming out of children going to school with flashlights, doctors operating in the dark, diners at restaurants eating by candlelight. They refuse to give up. And I think that speaks to the Ukrainian spirit. We heard from one man who said that he doesn't mind living with no power, no heat, no water, as long as there are no Russians, Kira.
Well, that supports their faith, too. I can hear church bells in the background there where you are. Let's also talk about this high-profile NATO meeting, Inez, in Bucharest this week on whether Ukraine will someday join the alliance. What's going to take place there, and what are you foreseeing?
Yeah, all eyes on that meeting. So that will be NATO foreign ministers meeting to once again reiterate their position that they believe Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO at some point down the road. And the interesting part of all of this is the location. So this meeting will be taking place in Bucharest, which is the same city where former President George W. Bush once convinced NATO allies that both Ukraine and Georgia should be allowed to join NATO. And just 4 months later, Russia invaded Georgia. So 14 years later, a similar situation here, and NATO allies at that meeting in Bucharest starting tomorrow will once again reiterate their support of Ukraine, their view that Ukraine should at some point be allowed to join NATO.
All right, Inez de la Cuetara there in Kyiv, thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.